Welcome back, everyone, to Biblio Files, the Ann Arbor District Library's little video about books. We usually answer one question in a few minutes. I'm Christopher, and I'm joined today by Lucy and Amanda. Today's topic is, what's a book that you almost finished reading, but didn't quite finish? You put it down for some reason. Amanda, what do you have for us today?
So this was a tougher question for me. I am sort of a stickler, and when I start a book, I tend to keep going. But there's usually a handful of books each year that I quit for some reason. And I was going through my list to try to find a good book for today. And the book I chose is a more recent book, and it was an acclaimed book, Trust Exercise by Susan Choi. It was a 2019 adult fiction novel. It actually won the National Book Award for fiction. I did not get close to the end. I stopped reading about a third of the way through, so I left a good chunk of it. The book is set, well, the part I was reading was set in a performing arts high school in the 80s, and it starts out as a bit of a love story between these two characters, and then it, according to the internet, it gets weird. I didn't get to the weird part, or I don't even know what happens in the middle or at the end. I just know I quit a third of the way through. And this isn't for me to come on here and give it a bad review. I mean, it won the National Book Award. There's plenty of other people I know who've read it and enjoyed it, but it just wasn't, I couldn't get into it, and I just put it down. And I have the problem of having too many things on my to be read list. My stack is so huge. And so at the time period when I was working on starting and finishing this book, I was like, no, there are other things that you need to get to next. So it's okay to let it go. And usually I don't. Usually I'm like, okay, you're 50 pages in, you're 70 pages in, you're 180, you got to keep going. And I do let myself quit occasionally, depending on the book, because there are some other ones I quit closer to the end. But this was one of the most recent ones this year where I was just like, no, I'm not going to keep going, and that's okay. So for me, it was Trust Exercise. Did either of you finish or read that book?
I did read it, and I finished it. And I have to say, and it does get, I don't know if weird's the right word, like there's just I don't want to spoil anything, but it's one of those books where there's an unexpected plot twist. But I wasn't like it wasn't on my favorites list, you know. I know a lot of people loved it, but for me, I just read other stuff, you know, that came out in that year that I more enjoyed. So
yeah, I have a hard time sometimes with contemporary popular adult fiction that's on all the lists. Like I wait for 200 holds and I finally get the book, and then I'm like, I'd rather read a teen novel. But anyway, so that was my choice. So Lucy, what did you pick? What was the book that you quit?
Well, like you, I tend to finish books, but that's actually not entirely true. Like I have a 50-page rule. So if I am 50 pages in and I'm not enjoying it, I'll allow myself to put it down, depending on the book. Some books have to have a longer rule or a shorter rule. But if I've made it past that mark, I usually try to finish the book. But one book that I didn't finish, not because it wasn't really great, was this book called Underland by Robert McFarlane. So it's Underland, A Deep Time Journey. And as you can see, if you can see, like I was definitely into this book. I mean, there's so much in here. It's just that I was into it and I was obsessed. And then I just got to this point where I was like, I can't read this deeply anymore. And I put it down and I haven't finished it, but reviewing it for today's program made me really want to finish it. It's a fascinating book. Robert McFarlane, the author, kind of explores underground spaces. So instead of going up in the world to see what's there or into, you know, he's just going down below the earth. And it's this huge exploration of many parts of the earth's underworld, like the actual physical underworld, but he talks about the mythology and the underworld and literature. And he, some of the places he goes are like, he dives deeply into the catacombs, and there's a whole life in the catacombs in Paris that goes on that I never knew about. He goes like 1,000 feet underground, in Slovenia, I think. And then he talks all about these fungal networks that exist underneath the ground in the forest. So it's like all over the place, and it's just fascinating. But his prose is like he's very descriptive. And so I think that was part of it. I just started to it was like too much information for my brain. And so I think that's why I put it down. But I'm excited that this was a topic today because I love the idea. I love a book that reveals hidden worlds. So I'm super excited to go back to this. And maybe I'll just like put my Post-its aside and not have to be annotating it quite so much. So part of that's my own issue. Yeah. So that was Underland by Robert Macfarlane. So Christopher, what book did you almost finish, but not quite?
Well, I think this was a topic that I picked, and I did have a specific book in mind. It's The Idiot by Dostoevsky. And I love reading all sorts of different Russian fiction, and I love reading about the culture and so much about Russian history. And I love Dostoevsky. Could not finish The Idiot. I was within about 50 pages of the end and just could not do it. It's a little too based on the contemporary political scene in Russia, and other people really enjoy it, but it just didn't say anything to me, and couldn't do it. It's possible that the new translation, there was a translating team, that two people that were retranslating a lot of Dostoevsky stories. Maybe that new edition is a lot better, but I couldn't do it. Like the two of you, I do like to have finished a book, because now I cannot say to myself, I read that book. It's in this weird limbo state of I started it and didn't finish it, so I don't feel like I have any authority to say anything about the book except that I didn't finish it. So that's my pick for today, The Idiot by Dostoevsky. And what we have coming up next is a favorite classic. So join the conversation. Let us know if you have a book that you have almost completed but put down for some reason. We'd love to hear from you. Take care.